Hello, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video, I want to talk about PhD or doctorate authorship disputes or sort of credit assignment problems that happen. So if you don't know, I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. And in this video, what I'm going to get into is some lessons that I learned along the way in terms of this. So the first thing is the reason why that there's these authorship disputes is generally due to uncertainty over people's actions in, who's going to take credit over those particular things. So the reason why you might feel negative sometimes if somebody's taking credit for a particular thing is because you didn't assume that they were going to take credit for that particular idea, or you assume that they weren't going to take credit and then they do, or the complete opposite, right? And that happens. It tends to happen actually a fair bit in academics, and it's not out of the norm to have these authorship disputes in any sort of way. So here's some lessons that I've learned that you might consider going forward, right? So first of all, it's extremely easy for people to take credit for a particular idea. So there's kind of two ways that you might do this, and there's actually a literature or that there's a mindset or a literature on open innovation that happens, and I'm borrowing from that. And the idea is a lot of companies years ago, and they still do, they have a very closed sort of ownership over their particular ideas, and they try to dispute and try to sort of guard off any sort of intellectual property disputes. But at some companies, they're much more open and they share their ideas that they have. And they're very open with the sharing that they do. And they play by different games. With the open idea, what they tend to do with open innovation, what companies tend to do is they put the idea out there because then they get known for that particular idea rather than sort of guarding off that idea, and it actually gets diffused a little bit quicker. So that's kind of my mindset, is that sometimes the more you share, the better off you are. Sometimes you run into problems with that, though, as well. And you have to be just careful in who you're sharing with and what you're doing, and just make sure that it's okay, that is, you just be very sort of explicit and think about it as you're sharing particular ideas when you're sort of being open with the ideas that you're doing. The second thing is, and this is related, is just be explicit with any sort of relationships that you have. Just think of it as sort of a contract. You might send emails back and forth and say, well, what's the authorship order going to be? And you have to sort of think about it along the way, because it changes. The workload changes along the way. And you just have to be open and honest about it. And I think that's the best possible way. It's unnerving and uncomfortable, but at the same time, you have to be open and honest about it, because you don't want to be in the situation where you feel negative, or you gets to so far along that you actually have to go through sort of legal disputes. So the more that you sort of be careful with it and sort of treat it as a real contract, that the more that you're going to save yourself, and email and communicate on a regular basis what the sort of job responsibilities are, who's going to do what, and who's going to take credit for those kind of things going forward. A third thing, and this is one thing that I've learned to save myself a lot, is I typically don't say no to a lot of different things, but I'm testing. I don't like to jump into things, if this makes sense. So what I do is do sort of small chores that they might do. So for example, if somebody asks me to do something, I might do it pretty quickly and see what the response is. If they come back and actually do it and do a bigger thing, then I know that they're serious about that kind of thing, right? So for example, somebody might say, let's work on a paper together. Well, then you could just simply say, okay, I'll draft something up, and you go and draft up a couple of paragraphs and you send it to that person. If the response is positive and they actually write some stuff down, then that's a good thing, right? But if it's negative, then you've only wasted a couple of paragraphs and maybe 25 minutes of your time or something like that, half an hour of your time, right? Compared to actually investing a significant amount of effort in terms of working on a paper and then sending it to somebody, and it just kind of sits there. So you just want to sort of think about that going forward. This kind of small chores and doing proportionate how much based on how much you trust that relationship. It actually works out really well. It's worked out well for me in the past, and I'll continue to do that going forward. A fourth thing that you can look at is sometimes you can tell how these relationships are going to go based on the publishing style of the individuals that you might possibly work with. And sometimes you have to ask other people, what's it like to work with those people? That you do get some insight from that. And that might be a good way to sort of consider and think about, what's going to happen in the future. And that's really what you have to forecast, right? And what are the roles and responsibilities going forward, and how trustworthy these individuals are. It's really important to think about these kind of things, by the way. So you should do this, particularly as a PhD student, where you have less power in the relationship than you do as a professor. And you should definitely consider that going forward. And the fifth thing that I think is important, and just looking around from other people around me, is when problems happen or when things are not really going the right way, I think the best thing is just to terminate the relationship pretty quickly rather than letting it go and letting things kind of get long in the saddle, I guess. You want to make sure that you just kind of terminate that relationship and move on. It's going to be much more beneficial for you than it is kind of working through things and disputing and feeling kind of negative about the relationship, rather than finding a relationship that just works and is going to be fun and you have a great working relationship. That is a really important thing that I've seen, just by looking around and talking to other people, that has worked out great for them. So that's it. That's all I want to talk about. And hopefully you like this. Hopefully this is going to help you with your sort of PhD authorship credit disputes. If it doesn't, I can add some more stuff if you want. You can ask more questions about this. I'd be happy to respond. So that's it. Give me a thumbs up and do subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.